How about Mecca? How
Yes.
many Muslims travel to Mecca?
Yeah.
And you're absolved of your sins.
Yeah.
You go to Mecca, you make the pilgrimage, and they all go around, and they're essentially walking around a meteor. I think that's what it is. Look at that. Wow. I mean, when you also, like, how beautiful is that? If you go there, you probably really believe. Man, I got to tell you something that changed me, changed how I see life, religion, spirituality, all of it. This isn't some ayahuasca trip in the jungle or some DMT vision that knocked me out of this reality. This time it was real. It was ancient. It was alive. I went to Mecca and Medina with Colin Quinn, and what happened there? It broke every stereotype I ever had. This was a whole different frequency of truth. Look, I've always been curious about everything. I mean, that's the whole thing, right? Curiosity is what drives people like me. Why are we here? What's the truth behind religion, God, energy, the universe? That's why I bring all these thinkers and scientists and spiritual dudes on my podcast, and I'll be Honest Islam. I didn't know jack about it. Like, really, I had stereotypes, sure, media garbage, but I never understood it, never even came close. And then one day, Colin Quinn and I were joking about religion on the podcast, and he goes, dude, we should go to Mecca. Not like tourists, like actual observers. And I laughed at first, but it stuck in my head. Why not go straight to the source? So we called some folks, pulled some strings, got permission guidance. It's not like you can just walk into Mecca as a non-Muslim. And long story short, we arranged something truly special, not as performers, not as podcasters, but as seekers guests in the heart of Islam. When I stepped off that plane in Saudi Arabia, something felt different right away. The air, the energy, the reverence, and then we got to Mecca, bro. I can't even explain it. Imagine standing in a place where millions of people have prayed for over 1,000 years. A place so sacred that just walking there feels like stepping into a dimension made of spirit and history. You hear the adhan, the call to prayer, echoing from every direction, that sound. It hits you right in the chest, like someone just knocked on your soul. Colin's standing next to me, mouth open, looking like he's been hit by a wave of silence. We weren't even speaking. We just watched, observed, took it in. And then we saw at the Kaaba, this black cube, not flashy, not ornate, but pulsing with meaning. People circling it, moving in harmony, crying, whispering prayers. No ego, no distraction. Just surrender. I'm getting goosebumps just saying this, man. Here's the thing, man. What you see in Mecca isn't about religion the way we think of it in the West. It's about unity, discipline, purpose. It's about letting go of your individual BS and becoming part of something cosmic. We met this old man from Indonesia, must have been in his 80s, barely walking, and you know what he said, I saved for 43 years to be here. Every day I dreamed of this moment, he wept while he touched the marble floor. That's devotion, man. That's not fear-based religion, that's love. I realized something else too, Islam. In its true form, isn't just about rules or rituals. It's a lifestyle of balance of connection. The discipline of prayer 5 times a day, it's like mental recalibration, meditation with intention, gratitude on a schedule, and the way people treat each other, respect brotherhood. We were strangers, and yet people fed us, hugged us, thanked us for just being there. You don't get that kind of humility in most places. Then we went to Medina Prophet, Muhammad City, this place. It's softer. Like Mecca is fire and Medina is water. We visited Al-Masjid an-Nabawi, the Prophet's Mosque. The vibe there is calm, peaceful, but also powerful, like standing next to wisdom that's alive. I don't care what your beliefs are. When you walk through that mosque and see people crying, reading the Quran, helping each other, praying with such sincerity, you realize these people aren't brainwashed, they're not zombies. They're connected to something. I had a moment sitting alone in the mosque, just watching a boy teach his father how to recite a verse. His father, like this kid, learned the scripture and was now guiding the man who raised him. That hit me hard. That's generational respect. That's transmission of divine knowledge from kid to parent. That's rare. I had deep talks with scholars there.
One guy, a professor, said to me, Joe, people think Islam is a religion of control, but true Islam is about surrender, not to men, not to governments, but to truth, to justice, to the one who made all of us. The ego is the real enemy. Boom mind blown Colin, of course, cracked a few jokes about camel traffic and halal KFC, but even he admitted, man, this is like stepping into a dimension where God is real and everyone knows it. So here's what I'll say to anyone who's listening. You don't have to convert to Islam, you don't have to agree with every belief, but you owe it to yourself to understand it. Don't let news clips define a billion people. Don't let fear.
Write your narrative. This journey changed me. It humbled me. It reminded me that the truth isn't loud, it's quiet. It doesn't scream through headlines. It whispers in the hearts of people who pray in silence, who walk miles barefoot just to kneel in front of their creator. Mecca and Medina are not just places, they're frequencies. You feel them before you understand them. And even now, weeks later, I close my eyes and I can still hear the echo of that prayer call in my bones. Colin wants to go back again next year. I mean, maybe next time we'll fast during Ramadan. Maybe we'll climb Mount Hira. Who knows? But I do know one thing. You don't leave Mecca and Medina the same man you were when you arrived. You leave quieter, you leave more awake, and that's the real journey. We got back to LA and man, everything felt loud again. The noise, the ads, the cars, the endless scrolling, it all just felt like static after the silence of Medina. I remember sitting in my studio just staring at the mic and thinking, what the hell am I even doing here? It's weird how when you come back from something ancient, something sacred, you start questioning all the modern noise. Like, who's actually in control of your thoughts? What are you really chasing, likes, ego, money, followers? Those things felt so hollow after what I'd seen. And it wasn't even about becoming religious. It was about becoming more human. I remember I was sitting with Colin, and we were just sipping black coffee in silence, like actual silence, no jokes, no bits. And he goes, man, it's like we got unplugged from the Matrix, and I laughed. But it was true. Something inside me had been reset. It was like Mecca had cleaned out my internal RAM and Medina had installed some kind of spiritual OS. And it wasn't some psychedelic thing where your ego dies and comes back wearing a fedora. This was grounded. This was real. One of the first things I did was stop multitasking. I know that sounds dumb, but after watching people bow 5 times a day, completely unplugged from the world, I realized how fragmented I'd become. I'd be checking emails while doing squats, answering texts, mid-conversation scrolling while talking to my kids. My attention span was trash, so I decided to pray, not in a religious way, but in a focused, intentional way. 5 minutes, 5 times a day, I just stopped everything and reflected. No phone, no distractions, just breath and awareness. And you know what happened? My anxiety dropped, my patience came back, my clarity improved. It was like I stopped reacting and started responding. That's one of the biggest lessons Islam gave me, discipline, not just in rituals, but in how you carry your mind. And bro, let me talk about generosity. I saw things in Mecca that broke me. People giving their last piece of bread to strangers. People cleaning the shoes of elders like it was an honor. I saw this young guy, probably 18, holding the hand of a blind old man, walking him all the way from the bus to the mosque. And when I asked him why he did it, you know what he said? Because that could be my father and Allah is watching.
Boom.
That right there is the kind of spiritual accountability we don't have anymore. We think God is somewhere far in the sky watching us like a security guard. But there it felt like God was in every step, every act, every intention. And that awareness made people kinder, softer, more humble. And I'll be honest, it made me emotional. I'm not the kind of guy who cries easily. I mean, I cried once watching Braveheart, but that's different. But in Medina, I wept. I actually broke down, and not because something sad happened, but because something pure cracked open in me. I felt small, not in a shameful way, but in a cosmic way. Like I finally understood my size in the universe, and that was freeing. Because when you realize you're not the center of the universe, you stop obsessing over your problems, you stop taking yourself so seriously. That's the paradox, right? You shrink your ego and you grow your soul. And speaking of ego, man, Islam doesn't mess around with it. Everything about the pilgrimage is designed to crush it. You wear simple white cloth. You walk barefoot. You sleep on floors. You pray shoulder to shoulder with janitors and CEOs. No VIP section, no branding, no influencer passes. It's unity at the deepest level. And that hits hard when you're used to LA, where everything's about image status filters. There in Mecca, nobody cares who you are. They care how pure your intention is. And that made me look at myself in the mirror. What am I doing with this platform, this podcast, these millions of listeners? Am I feeding egos, or am I helping people think deeper, ask better questions, get closer to something real? So I changed some things. I started inviting more scholars, not just edgy thinkers, but people of true wisdom, I brought on a Muslim neuroscientist who talked about how prayer affects brainwaves. I had a former atheist who converted after reading the Quran, and he told me how it rewired his morality. Not because of fear, but because of truth. And these conversations were different. They weren't just content, they were conversations. They felt like service, like offering, and you know what? The feedback was insane. Thousands of people messaged me saying they'd never seen this side of Islam. They were crying while listening. They were curious. They were grateful. And I realized that's the power of truth. It doesn't need to scream. It just needs to be witnessed. And let me tell you about Ramadan, man. Oh boy. So after Mecca, I decided I was going to try it. Not just the fasting, but the whole package. Waking up before sunrise, eating that pre-dawn meal, then fasting. Until sunset, no food, no water, no anger, no gossip. Just stillness. And bro, the first 3 days were brutal. I mean, brutal. I was snapping at Colin. I had headaches. My energy tanked. But then around day 4, something clicked. My body adjusted. My mind slowed down. I started hearing my own thoughts again. Not the anxious ones, but the real ones. And when I broke that fast at sunset with just a date and water, it tasted better than any steak ever made. That's not a metaphor. It was joy in its rawest form, and I started to get it. I started to understand why millions of people do this every year. Not out of punishment, but out of devotion, out of remembrance. Because we forget, man, we forget what hunger feels like. We forget how blessed we are. We forget the poor. We forget God Ramadan is a cosmic reset button. It strips you down to your essence. And when you come out the other side, you're clearer, stronger, and lighter. I even noticed my dreams changed, more vivid, more meaningful. Like my soul was finally unclogged. And Colin said the same thing. He was dreaming of minarets and sand and voices reciting verses. It was wild. And I haven't even talked about the Quran yet. That book, man, I used to think it was just another old scripture, but when I actually sat down and read it, not as a critic, but as a seeker, it blew my mind. The language, the structure, the rhythm, it wasn't just poetic. It was mathematical. It spoke to your intellect and your soul at the same time. And there were verses that felt like they were written for me. Like this one, indeed, in the remembrance of God, the hearts find rest. That verse hit me like a truck, because that's what I'd been looking for all along. Not stimulation, not escape, rest for this restless monkey mind. And I finally found it in the most unexpected place, the heart of Islam, the desert, the call to prayer, the silence in a mosque at 3 a.m. So now I wake up differently, I move differently. I eat slower, I speak more carefully. I try to treat people with more intention, not because I'm perfect, but because I've seen what perfection looks like in the simplicity of a prayer mat in a mosque filled with people who trust in something greater than themselves. I still lift, I still joke, I still hunt elk and love jiu-jitsu, but now there's something deeper behind it all. A stillness, a center, and I owe that to Mecca, to Medina, to the people I met, to the silence I heard, to the God I didn't know I was looking for. If you ever get the chance, go not as a tourist, go as a soul searching for truth, because what you'll find there isn't just Islam. You'll find yourself. And that's the real pilgrimage. After all that, man, after coming back from Mecca and Medina, after fasting in Ramadan and reading the Quran, after sitting in those mosques and feeling something ancient and holy press up against my ribs, something started shifting, not just in my thoughts, but in my relationships too, like how I talk to people, how I sit with them, how I listen. I started to realize how much of my life had been a performance, a broadcast, a spectacle. Even the podcast, which I love, had become a stage, and now all I wanted was silence, intimacy, something real. I remember coming home and seeing my kids, and bro, something hit me like I'd missed the quiet miracle of fatherhood, like really missed it. I'd been present, but not present, you know what I mean? I'd been there, but always with a phone or a to-do list or a mind full of the next guest, next deal, next clip. But now I just sat there watching my daughter draw with a pink marker on the table, and instead of correcting her, I just smiled, because I realized, man, we're always trying to control everything, teach everything, fix everything. And sometimes what kids need, what people need, is just presence. No lecture, no strategy, just witness their being. And when I hugged her that day, it felt like I was hugging something God had handcrafted, not by chance, but by design. I started thinking about how Islam emphasizes family, how it says heaven lies at the feet of your mother, how every Friday men take their sons to the mosque, not just to pray, but to bond, to transfer something sacred. I never saw that growing up, not in that way, not with that level of respect. And I realized something: modern masculinity is starving. It's strong, but spiritually malnourished. And what I saw in Mecca was the opposite: men crying, while praying men holding their fathers' hands, men teaching their sons how to stand before God. Not as kings, not as alphas, but as servants, and that changed how I saw myself. I wasn't just a man, I was a soul in a body, a servant with responsibility, not just to lift heavy things or fight or hunt, but to love, guide, and bow before the truth. I started calling my mom more, checking in with her, not just to ask how she's doing, but to thank her, like really thank her for raising me, for loving me in her imperfect way. I even called up a few people I hadn't spoken to in years, old friends, people. I ghosted people. I let go, not out of malice, but ego, and I apologized not because I wanted anything back, but because I didn't want to carry that weight anymore. And you know what? Most of them responded with love, real love. And I thought, man, how many things have I lost just because I couldn't say sorry or just because I didn't make the first call? And that's another thing I learned from that journey. Humility, real humility, not the fake kind where you pretend to be humble while secretly thinking you're better. I'm talking about the kind where you genuinely believe everyone around you might be closer to God than you are, that the janitor sweeping the floor at the mosque might be more enlightened than the guy with 1 million followers. And that kind of humility, man, it changes your tone, it changes your posture, it changes the energy you bring into every room. And then there's this one night I can't forget. I was sitting alone in my backyard stars out LA, buzzing in the distance, and I thought about death, not in a morbid way, but in a real way, like what happens when I die. Where does all this go? The fame, the fights, the clips, the merch, the reputation. What does it mean if my soul isn't right? If I never asked the real questions, and for the first time in my life, I actually felt ready for death, not because I want to die, but because I started living more truthfully, more gently, more purposefully. And I think about the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, how he lived, how he walked among the poor, how he forgave people who hurt him, how he buried his children with tears in his eyes, and still stood up to lead the prayer. That's not weakness, man. That's strength on a cosmic level. And the fact that 1 billion people say his name with love every single day, not because they're brainwashed, but because he earned it through character, discipline, patience, that says something. And I used to be the kind of guy who would say, hey man, believe whatever you want, just don't force it on me. And now I still believe in freedom of belief. But I also believe in depth of belief. Like if you're going to believe something, believe it with your life. Don't just wear it like a shirt. You change when it's out of style. And I see now why Muslims pray 5 times a day. It's not because they have to. It's because they get to. It's like spiritual water. You don't pray because you're punished. You pray because your soul is thirsty. And after experiencing that rhythm, that stillness, that return again and again and again, I get it now. I truly do. There's a beauty in that surrender and that repetition. It's like lifting weights for the soul. And now, even when I'm not praying like them, I'll pause, I'll take a deep breath, I'll thank God for this body, this moment, this awareness, and then I'll speak softer to the guy who gets my coffee or the Uber driver or the person who gets my name wrong, because who knows, maybe God put them there just to soften me a little more. I also started reading more slowly, especially scripture, not like a textbook, but like a treasure map with pauses, with reflection, like how the Quran says, do they not reflect upon themselves? And I realized that most of my life I've been looking outward for answers, success, women, money, experience, but the real journey is inward. It's always been, and Mecca pointed me inward. Medina confirmed it, and now every day is like a continuation of that journey. Every moment is a step in the pilgrimage back to my real self. And you know what, man, people keep asking me, are you going to convert? And I don't even know how to answer that, because it's not about labels anymore. It's about truth. It's about what transforms you in whatever this path is. Whether you call it Islam or submission or awakening, it's real, it's powerful, and I respect the hell out of it. I'll never joke about it the same way again. I'll never mock someone's devotion or ritual, because behind every act of worship is a whole story, a whole wound, a whole journey. And who the hell am I to mock that? And Colin says the same thing. He told me, bro, I didn't know faith could look like that. I didn't know silence could be that loud, and I laughed because, yeah, that's the paradox, right? Mecca is the loudest silence you'll ever hear, and Medina is the softest fire you'll ever feel, and we carry that now. Not like a souvenir, but like a scar, a holy scar, something that says we went to the edge of something ancient, and we came back different. I think about going back all the time, maybe not even to perform Umrah or Hajj, maybe just to sit outside the mosque again, barefoot on marble, to hear that call to prayer, to watch old men walk with canes toward the light, and to remember who I am, not Joe Rogan, the podcast guy, but Joe the soul, Joe the servant, Joe the speck of dust in God's infinite design. And if you're hearing this and you're on the edge, if you're curious, if something in you is tugging toward truth, don't ignore it. Don't silence it. Follow it, read, ask, sit in. Mosques talk to people, not just scholars, but lovers of God, the ones with no stage, no platform, just light in their eyes, because those are the ones who can point you home. And if you're Muslim listening to this, thank you for your hospitality, your warmth, your patience, and your example, because your way changed me, not through force, but through presence. And that is the greatest dawah, the greatest invitation. And I'm still learning, I'm still stumbling, but now I'm still stumbling, but now I'm stumbling toward the light. And that's what matters. That's what this whole journey was about. Not perfection, not arrival, but direction. And now I know where I'm facing. You know what really stayed with me after I came back from Medina? It wasn't the architecture, it wasn't even the grandeur of the Kaaba or the sacredness of the Prophet's mosque. It was the silence in my mind. That's what shook me. Because for years, my brain was just chaos, noise, opinions, deadlines, content, performance, overthinking everything. But for the first time in my life, I came back and there was a stillness I couldn't explain. It wasn't the kind of silence that makes you uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence that makes you realize you've been at war with yourself, and now finally the war is over. I didn't go to Mecca looking for religion. I didn't even go trying to find God. I just went to see what the truth was, to experience it firsthand without the filters of Western media or bias. But what I found, man, it found me first. I remember sitting in the hotel room one night after we visited the Prophet's Mosque, just staring out the window. There were thousands of people walking, praying, crying, and suddenly I realized I wasn't watching them. I was part of them. Not because I converted, not because I changed my name or took a new identity, but because the human inside of me woke up. The ancient part. The part that remembers that we came from something higher. And it wasn't just me. Colin Quinn, man, he's a comedian. He jokes about everything. But that night, he was dead silent, just looking at the ceiling. I asked him what was up, and he goes, "Bro, it's like I've been blind my whole life, and I didn't even know it." I laughed at first, but he was serious. He said, "We chase success, we chase women, cars, applause, status, but this thing in Medina, it doesn't chase you, it waits for you. And when you're ready, it grabs your heart and never lets go." He nailed it. That's exactly what it feels like. We're so caught up in proving we exist that we forget to actually live. And here, in the middle of the desert, I saw people who had nothing, smiling like they had everything, people sleeping on the floor, eating dates and water, hugging each other like they just got out of prison, but they were free the whole time. It made me question everything. Like, what are we doing back in LA? We're stressing over coffee orders, lighting for Instagram, podcast ratings, stock prices, and meanwhile there's a whole world out there where people are happy just to breathe in the same air as a sacred place. And look, I'm not some naive guy trying to romanticize hardship. I've seen both sides. I've seen money, fame, chaos, and now I've seen what faith looks like up close. And the thing is, faith doesn't look like control. It looks like peace. It's not weakness. It's power without ego. The power to be content, the power to walk slow, the power to hold someone's hand and pray without asking for anything. That's the power I never knew I needed. There was this moment, I'll never forget it. We were sitting near the mosque watching an old man help a child put on his sandals after prayer. That's it. Nothing big. Just that simple act of care. But the way he did it, like he was serving God through that child. No rush, no complaints, just love. And I thought, man, when was the last time I treated someone with that much gentleness? When was the last time I slowed down enough to notice another human soul? I had fans recognize me in Saudi, believe it or not. A few guys came up and said, "Joe Rogan, we love your podcast." And I laughed, because here I was in the holiest place in Islam and someone's talking to me about JRE. But then they said, "We're glad you're here. Maybe now more people will understand us." And that hit me like a brick. Maybe that's part of why I was called there. Not to convert, not to pretend I'm something I'm not, but to witness, to listen, to feel To come back and say to the world, you've been lied to about Islam, you've been lied to about Muslims, and the truth, it's beautiful. I'm not saying every individual is perfect, no group is, but the heart of that religion, the real Islam, it's a call to remember who you are, a call to return, to realign. And the way people welcomed me there, man, I didn't feel like a stranger. I felt like a long-lost brother coming home. That kind of love. You can't fake that. It was real. I asked one of the scholars, why do you think this place affects people so deeply? He said, because Medina isn't just a location, it's a mirror. It shows you your soul. And when your soul sees truth, it cries because it remembers. That one line changed everything for me. That's what I have been feeling. My soul remembered. It remembered what silence feels like, what purpose feels like, what love without conditions feels like. And the crazy part is, once you feel it, you can't unfeel it. It doesn't matter where you go after. That connection stays with you. Even in LA, even in chaos, even in your car stuck in traffic, you'll still feel that sacred vibration somewhere deep inside. And it'll call you again and again. And one day, you'll answer.